Hey there, and welcome to the fourth installment of our series where we dive into the world of Archivecraft and explore some alpha and beta footage. Today, we're shifting our focus to promotional screenshots that Blizzard released to hype up the game between 2000 and 2003. It's important to note that some elements in these images might be specifically staged for promotional purposes and weren't actually part of the final game. So keep that in mind as we take this visual journey through the game's early days. If you're enjoying what you see, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on what we do next. Let's dive into the first intriguing image. Here we witness a player character utilizing an ability named Create House. This glimpse likely points to developers experimenting with a player housing system during the game's development. It's noteworthy that, despite this early testing, player housing did not materialize in the final version of the game. The closest equivalent we've seen throughout World of Warcraft's lifespan might be the garrisons introduced in the Warlords of Draenor expansion. In the next image, we come across a meeting stone, also known as a summoning stone. Initially, these stones were intended for assembling or initiating parties when members fell within the required level range. In later patches, their functionality expanded to include summoning party members to a specific location. The intriguing aspect here is the possibility that these stones were initially planned to be placed in major questing towns rather than exclusively within dungeons, as we see in the final version of the game. In this following image, we're treated to an earlier model of the Warlock Succubus pet. The design carries a distinct, old-school vibe, evoking a sense of nostalgia. However, personal preferences may vary, but I feel that the current model is favored over this earlier iteration. In this image, we observe an orc warlock accompanied by an infernal pet, and it's strikingly noticeable that the infernal appears significantly smaller than its final version in the game. This raises an interesting possibility that these pets were originally intended to increase in size as they leveled up. In this next screenshot, we witness a group of Horde and Alliance characters joining forces to battle a Crimson Ooze. This intriguing scene suggests the possibility that, in the early stages of development, there were plans for Horde and Alliance players to group up for quests together. In this image, we encounter an old model of the Dark Portal in the Blasted Lands. The Dark Portal holds iconic significance in the Warcraft universe, tracing back to the very first Warcraft strategy games. Notably, its placement in the Blasted Lands during development sets the stage for some unusual locations we're about to explore next. In this image, we encounter the Dark Portal at the bottom of the sea. My suggestion is a location possibly in or around the Azshara zone. This unusual placement raises the intriguing possibility that it might have served as a placeholder for future dungeon or raid portals. If this speculation holds true, it could imply that there were plans for an underwater dungeon in the classic version of the game. In this image, the Dark Portal stands in place of Skullomance, a dungeon designed for around level 60 players. When considered alongside the image from previous video, where the Dark Portal replaces the raid portal of Zul'Gurub, it strongly suggests that these portals were used as placeholders for future dungeons and raids during the game's development. In this next image, we have a view of Stormwind Keep, and its architectural design appears consistent with the final version of the game. However, a notable detail is the guard models, which seem to have undergone a complete rework later in the development process. In these images, we first see the Scarlet Monastery Library section, and then we're presented with the final room of the Scarlet Monastery Armory. Originally, it's plausible that Scarlet Monastery was envisioned as one comprehensive dungeon, but later got divided into multiple smaller dungeons during development. The peculiar detail of the room in the Scarlet Monastery Armory, featuring undead enemies instead of the final boss, Herod, the Scarlet Champion, adds to the mystery. This prompts speculation that, at one point, Scarlet Monastery might have been conceived as being under undead control indicating shifts in narrative and design choices during the game's creation. Share your thoughts on this potential undead-themed Scarlet Monastery in the comments below as we continue to explore the developmental nuances captured in these images. In this next image, we're presented with an early depiction of Ironforge that showcases multiple different levels. This design deviates from the final release of the game, where Ironforge was streamlined to have a more accessible layout. The decision to alter the city structure likely aimed to improve navigability and create a more player-friendly experience. In this image, we get a glimpse of Blackrock Mountain, and it's evident that its design was finalized relatively early in the development process. This aligns with the historical significance of Blackrock Mountain, which has been a notable location since the original Warcraft strategy games. In this image, it appears that these two trolls are situated in what I believe to be the original version of the Outlands. Originally intended as a high-level zone for players, the Outlands eventually evolved into its own expansion and was not released during the original version of the game. In this image, we encounter a very early version of the Ogre model for Raxor in Deadmines. It's interesting to note that, despite being in the early stages of development, the weapon wielded by Raxor in this image remains consistent with the final version of the game. In this next image, we encounter Sneed's Shredder boss from Deadmines, and it's notable that the goblin models, including those associated with this encounter, appear to have been finalized relatively early in the development process. This suggests that Deadmines may have been one of the first dungeons to reach completion during the game's development. In this next image, it seems that originally dungeons may have been intended to be run by multiple groups teaming up, as indicated by the presence of multiple groups in this image. The fact that all the models and icons appear consistent with the final version of the game suggests that this concept underwent a change relatively late in the development process. Additionally, the lavishly jeweled ring has different stats in the final version of the game, which implies that item details underwent adjustments quite late in the development cycle. In this next image, we're presented with an old version of the trade window, showcasing the trade of a blood ring. It's interesting to note that, in the final version of the game, the blood ring ultimately provided 5 stamina. This snapshot offers a glimpse into the evolution of the trade interface and the attributes of specific items during the game's development. In this image, we get a glimpse of an old version of the options menu, providing insights into the user interface's developmental stages. Notably, the chat window reveals that, during certain parts of the beta, there were level caps imposed on players. In this image, we are presented with the Kobold Camp Cleanup quest, one of the initial quests for human players. A notable detail is that Marshall McBride appears to be using an old model. Additionally, the quest text and the reward have undergone significant changes compared to the version that was ultimately released. In this image, a group of humans is engaged in killing kobolds for a quest, and an intriguing detail surfaces. Magic appears to have functioned like a weapon skill at one point during the game's development. In this next image, we observe an undead mage using a spell on multiple enemies. The nature of these enemies is not entirely clear, but they might resemble some sort of ghostly beings. In this image, we encounter a character model resembling the one used by Khadgar in the Burning Crusade expansion. The resemblance raises the question of whether Khadgar was originally intended to be part of the original game, or if this was simply a generic model for a human mage enemy type. In this final image, we encounter a human priest with a unique model in Stormwind Keep. The distinctiveness of the model raises the intriguing possibility that this character might have been intended to represent Archbishop Benedictus, the leader of the Church of the Holy Light, or perhaps a different significant figure. Share your thoughts on the identity and significance of this human priest in Stormwind Keep in the comments below as we conclude our exploration of these captivating images from the game's development. Thank you for joining us in this fourth and final part of the series, delving into alpha and beta footage of World of Warcraft. If you've enjoyed this journey through the game's developmental snapshots, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback is valuable, so let us know what you'd like to see from the channel next. Whether it's more explorations of game development, specific game analyses, or other content, your input helps shape the direction of the channel. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it informative and enjoyable. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit that subscribe button below. Also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up by hitting the like button if you found it helpful. Your support really means a lot to me, and it helps me create more valuable content like this in the future.